Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Mythic. I am your host, Spencer, and I'm joined, just like every week, by my amazing co-host, who's going to crush her VML match this week, Mikaela. Who are you playing?
Hello, everyone.
I probably should know who you're playing before I throw that out there.
I actually play against Ash Lizzle this week. So
Easy win. No.
streamer. Yeah, so tough match, but I think I lock up top 2 if I can win this week. So,
Nice.
Pretty big deal.
Yeah, I'm rooting for you. Let's get into this week, Mikaela. We missed last week. To be completely honest with the listeners, my wife is pregnant and extremely sick, and then I also got sick, and last week was just rough. And Mikaela has been really kind with me over the last couple weeks, as my wife is down on is down on her luck. And Mikaela, I really appreciate it.
You know, it's not a problem at all.
But we actually are going to change our recording time moving forward because I did get a new job. And it's just going to be easier for me to kind of record on Wednesday nights. So the podcast will probably start coming out closer to Thursdays, Thursday evenings, and moving forward. But so should be ready for your Friday drive to work, stuff like that. But just kind of wanted to give that quick update. Also, it's episode 42, Mikaela, and this week we are going to be talking about Standard and kind of the things going on now that I'm always going to get this name of the set wrong. Is it Kaldheim? Kaldheim. Well, there you go. Things kind of popping off since that set came out. But before we do that, check out our sponsor over at puremtgo.com. They are a great place for some awesome up-and-coming Magic content creators. And their sponsor at MTGO Traders is one of the best places to get online Magic the Gathering cards. And we're going to be talking about online Magic Online results this week, Mikaela, because there were 2 challenges this week, and some of the better decks, in my opinion, actually came out of the challenges this weekend. So, oh my gosh, I almost forgot, Mikaela. I'm launching the Patreon this week. So, I don't know if it will happen by the time the podcast comes up, or if it will happen this weekend, but I've already set it up. Things are ready to go. I just need to get Mikaela's buy-in for a couple of things, and we'll be launching our Patreon at patreon.com, and I think it's Mythic Class. It'll be in the show notes regardless once it gets launched, but it's pretty exciting stuff. Mikaela, we have a Discord for the He's a Game media kind of network of podcasts, and this podcast actually gives out every month some store credit to MTGO Traders from our sponsors to a random person from you kind of post your limited trophy decks, and then from there you get put into a raffle, and then we kind of raffle them off. And this last month in January, we had I'm going to pull up I already know who the winner is, but I want to count the number of drops we had, because when the set came out, people just started going off. People were just posting their limited decks constantly. It was super awesome, super fun to see. And a couple of people had multiple entries, but this time our winner is Adrian D. So Adrian, I'll post that in the Discord, but you'll be getting $20 credit to mtgotraders.com, and it's really fun to see all of the different limited decks that are doing well in this format.
Yeah, congrats to Adrian, and yeah, this format has a lot of fun stuff going on from what I've seen. It's
really fun, super awesome, and we also the network is also doing a cash tournament for Standard. So the end of this month. So head on over to the Discord, join that, be a part of these kind of contests, and yeah, it's super awesome. I agree, by the way, Mikaela. The format's so fun. Like, I have been having trouble playing Standard because I've been drafting so much. I still haven't gotten a trophy yet, though, Mikaela. And this is the longest I've ever gone without a trophy. I was texting a friend about this, but and it's the perfect time to talk about our biggest movers, because I have I've been playing best of 1 for what it's worth, and I have more 6-win decks than I've probably ever had, and just cannot get a 7-win deck to save my life. I've been flooded a lot in this format, and I'm the type of person that just builds the deck the way that I believe is the right way. And I know that a lot of people think like in best of one you're supposed to trim on lands because of the hand smoother, but I can't bring myself to do it because it's bad practice for me.
It's part of the game. It's the best of one game. You got to play the game.
That's fair. That's fair.
That means cutting lands. Then cut those lands.
Let's talk about draft really quick before we get into the standard power rankings, because I do have a biggest mover, and mine is kind of an archetype rather than a single card for what it's worth, Mikaela. But my biggest mover is actually a mover down, and that is Elves, the archetype. I have had multiple draft decks in this draft format with multiple of the really good elf rares, whether it's the 2-drop, whether it's I've actually had in both of my elves decks, I had the 4 mana elf saga. One of them had that the planeswalker and the 2 mana, pump your elf guys. I cannot win with that deck. I actually think the deck is bad. I like legitimately I had one of the better versions of that deck, and I just think that you're kind of playing a lot of draft chaff in this format when you play that deck, and I think you need more than the deck has to offer in a lot of ways. I mean, just you have a bunch of really dorky creatures, and your opponents just, I don't know, the synergies are just so strong in this format that I think Elves kind of underperforms. Have you gotten to play with or against it yet?
I've not actually played against Elves. Yeah. I have a few elves in my current list that I'm going, but it's not really elves.
Yeah. All in elves disappoints right now for Mikaela. Avoid it. I'm giving you some tips here.
Good. I'm glad I won't have to waste my precious gems trying to draft elves.
What about you? What's your biggest mover in draft so far?
I feel like I would have had this card pretty high in general, but Boros Aggro has been awesome. I have a great snow draft going right now, and it is a solid card. Like just drawing a card is great, and that's what it's been doing a lot for me in my current draft deck. And that's the 1/2.
It's the 1 mana 1/2, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Look at the top card of your library. If it's a snow card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand.
Yeah. Do you like this card better than the flying the draw disc? I mean, this one's also an uncommon, so it's probably better. Mm-hmm. But
I haven't played the other one yet. I think this is my second draft since release.
Okay.
So I think I drafted like black white the first time.
Nice. Yeah, I think
with 3/3.
I also would have not expected it to be so easy initially to get snow, and I think that will be self-balancing. So like I think that the cards like this will move up and down, but I agree with you. Like I'm really impressed with just a lot of the snow cards right now.
Mm-hmm. That's fun.
I completely agree. Let's move quickly through this. We're gonna go into our main topic, our power rankings, and we have a new kind of way of doing this. This is completely stolen from when I was on Constructor Criticism. Full blessings from Allie and Mason, but this is how the points are going to break down. We'll adjust this as we get more events and different things to pull in. But here's how it worked this time. For the SCG 5K and the challenges, deck got 6 points for first, 5 for second, 4 for top 4, 3 for top 8, 2 for top 16. And then rather than going all the way down, we actually just said instead, let's pull in the SCG satellite decks that got 6-0 or 5-1 and give them 1 point. And we took all 8 satellite events. And we now have kind of a look at what does the winner's metagame look like? What is the winningest decks, along with kind of, even if they're the most played decks, like what won the most? And let's start from the bottom here. In 8th place, coming in with 15 points, was the deck from week 1 that just completely took over, Mikaela, and that was the Is It Snow Tempo deck. Have you gotten I did a Constructed Clash video with Matt Kling on the YouTube channel for this, but Mikaela, have you gotten a chance to play with or against this yet?
I have. This was actually my VML match for last week. My opponent was playing it, so I had a chance to test the matchup for Skrull, and I was very underwhelmed by the deck. Like, it definitely seemed to struggle against any sort of aggressive strategy. I was finding that I was just kind of running over it. So it really feels like one of those week one decks that everyone's like really excited about, and then you kind of figure out how to play against it and how to attack it.
Yeah, I think that a week one deck describes this deck really well. I think that it, in a world where you're able to not really have to worry about your opponent putting a clock on you, and you're able to kind of just sit back on one threat, this deck is really good. But I just don't know if that's the standard format that we're in right now. And so when we are, this deck is probably really strong if the format kind of goes in and out of that kind of format. But I just don't see it for this deck right now.
Yeah, and I even think like the matchups where you'd really be excited about it, like maybe like versus a Sultai, you just don't have enough threats to really be able to push through.
I agree. And on the match that we played, Matt Kling was playing blue-white Yorion, and I just dumpstered him. Like, it was pretty easy. And I just don't think that those are the type of control decks that people are playing right now. And I agree with you, it makes it a lot harder. Let's go into the number 7 deck, because it's actually tied with number 6. But the way that the tiebreaker breaks down is it's whoever got the most finishes. And that is going to be Boros Aggro with 17 points. Have you gotten the chance to play Showdown yet, Mikaela?
I tested a little bit of Naya early on. I've not played Boros yet, but I'm not surprised to see a Boros Aggro deck out there, given everybody being very high on Showdown of the Skells.
I played. This is the deck. This is one of the decks that I played. Well, I played it today. I recorded today. That's not up yet for Constructed Clash this week. And this deck is really hard to play. The list that I have seen, I think Gabby Sparks was actually streaming it today, was the list from the challenge from this weekend, which was pretty close to the list that I played today. And this deck is hard. It is. You would think that, turn Dork sideways is easy, but when you have Showdown and you have to decide how to sequence both before and after the Showdown, I actually find it really difficult. But Maul of the Skyclave, that is a magic card right now. Like, that thing just, I just want to put a Maul on a hollowed one all the time, Mikaela. That's just a good time. Or not a hollowed one, Hollow Blade. Sorry.
Seasoned Hollow Blade, yeah.
Yeah. So kind of the reverse, by the way, is the tempo. I actually think this has a really good matchup against decks like Sultai Yorion. I think that it has game against Gruul and Mono Green and Naya. Like, this deck seems really well positioned to me.
Yeah, I would agree. I know like week 1 we were seeing like some Abzan Yorion list popping up, and I feel like that's maybe where a deck like this might have trouble, where there's a lot of answers to the threats. But this really seems like it takes that mono white core of a deck and just improves upon it and gives you a little bit more reach with cards like Showdown.
Yeah, and the first time that I got to play Showdown, get a Showdown, play a Showdown, I was like, well, this is busted. Like, this is not fair. So
yeah, the 2 Showdowns in play at once are
it's
the dream.
Yeah, I did get a play on my video of today where I got to attack. I was gonna play a Showdown. I attacked with what is the rogue that flips their top card? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Mist something.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm not remembering off the top of my head.
No, I can't remember either. Anyway, I took a Cultivate off the top of their deck, and then I got to cast Cultivate that turn. And so my Showdowns for the rest of the game were just super lit. It was great. Let's go into the 6th place deck, also tied with 17 points. And that's a mono green. I combined basically all of the decks that played Florahedron. The 2-mana 1/1 that it can also be a land, that I kind of combined all of them, because not all of them played food, but all of them were like these big green decks. There were mono green aggro decks. I think there were 2 or 3 of them that did well, but I think those decks are a little bit different. Like, those are more stompy decks, whereas these are kind of like mid-range ramp decks almost. If you,
mm-hmm.
But this deck also seems well positioned to me for the most part. I really like these decks against Gruul. I think that you are probably a little bit worse against decks like Sultai, but I don't know. I think that Mono Green Food specifically is a deck that I would not be ashamed to play right now.
Yeah, it was solid prior to call time, and I agree it's still solid. Even got a couple little upgrades from the set.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, if you want to go into snow for this deck, it's totally reasonable, like a kind of a hybrid snow food type of situation. I think this deck's quite good. Where do you think that this deck kind of fits against kind of the Naya and Gruul decks?
Um, I know Gruul does struggle against this type of deck. It's not unwinnable. But I did have the opportunity to like play out this matchup a little bit pre-rotation. So yeah, I know Gruul will struggle against it a little bit. I could see Naya maybe having a little bit more reach, but the mono green food deck's just kind of playing that mid to late game a lot better than the Gruul decks are right now.
One of the things that I do like about Naya is that the things that you're getting in white are, dealing with their large threats, which your deck typically has a problem with, right? In the form of Giant Killer.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously you get to extend your game in a different way with Showdown. So I kind of agree with you that if Mono Green is good, maybe I'd rather be playing Naya. Naya is the other deck with 17 points, by the way, coming in at 5th place. And I did separate it from Gruul for what it's worth. Gruul does come in in tied with 19 points above this, but I think that the thing is for Naya is that I don't know that your mana is that bad. It's not great, but I don't even know that Gruul's mana is that good, to be honest.
Small sample size, I was struggling with the mana with Naya a little bit more than I was with Gruul. That could be an experience playing the deck and just not knowing how to sequence my lands correctly. So yeah, I mean, I think they are, even though you have a lot of similarities between the two decks, they perform pretty differently. And there are Naya builds that are a little bit closer to the Gruul Adventures build, but I feel like this Naya deck's trying to look to play a little bit longer game than the Gruul deck is. So, maybe Naya's struggling a little bit more with decks like Is It Tempo than Gruul is.
Sure. I do think that Giant Killer is in a pretty good place in the format, which makes Naya more interesting. One of my buddies, Mason Clark, and I were texting about, rather than playing Naya, maybe just playing Gruul with negate in the sideboard and just playing the pathways to do that. What do you think of that?
I feel like I heard about this happening, but people playing Gruul Splashing Blue.
Oh yeah, we had a great text chain calling it soggy Gruul, moist Gruul, stuff like. Ooh, Mikaela doesn't like that word. Now we know. I think that if you want to play green mid-rangey cards between a lot of the decks we're going to talk about, I think you have a ton of options. I don't think that I think there are going to be weeks where you want to play mono green. I think there are weeks where you want to play Gruul. I think that there are going to be weeks where you want to play Naya. It just kind of, if you're just in for the Great Henge, like, you have a plethora of options to pick from.
Yeah, for sure. And and all those decks, you have ways of generating card advantage too, outside of just Henge.
Yeah. Do you think that Gruul did worse the last 2 weeks because people were sick of playing it, or do you think that there are inherent problems in the format for the deck?
Oh, I would say I think people are a little sick of playing it, but one thing I was looking at earlier is Egon exists in this format now in Rakdos. So you have a deck that maybe Gruul had a pretty favorable matchup against previously in the Rakdos Sacrifice deck, now playing a 6/6 on turn 3. And I think that's a problem for Gruul, given, just a card like Lovestruck Beast out of mono green early on is enough of a problem for Gruul to get past. So I think there are challenges for the deck that the deck has not had before. But yeah, also people want to be trying out new things in the first week of the format.
Sure. Let's move on to the deck that Gruul did tie with. It's Dimir Rogues. I have a hot take. I don't think this deck has a good matchup in this list. Like, I do not think you should be playing this deck. I would not touch this deck with a 10-foot pole.
I think I like it versus the Sultai Yorion list.
So here's the thing, is you can build Sultai Yorion to beat it. While I agree right now the lists are not tuned to beat Rogues, I don't think that they have to be. I don't know. Also, our number one deck just dumpsters on this deck. So, but anyway, that's my hot take, Mikaela. Where do you see Rogues in this format?
Okay, I think it's a better deck than Is It Tempo, if you're looking to kind of play that style of deck.
Sure. That's probably true.
I just think it can attack in more ways. It can generate card advantage a little bit better. So I think it's a better deck than Is It Tempo for sure. I really have no interest in playing Dimir Rogues, and I say this and watch me play it Saturday or something, but I don't have a whole lot of interest in it. And I really don't think it's like positioned too well against these aggro decks. I really haven't played out versus like the Naya deck. I think it might be a little bit better versus Naya than Gruul, but I'd still be concerned.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends that say that they didn't think that the Gruul matchup was that bad. That was not my experience. I found Gruul to be really favored in the matchup. And I think that the other thing is that, there are just a lot of games that if things just break the wrong way for Dimir, Dimir has this awkward problem where depending on both the build of your deck and the composition of your opening hand, along with the sequence of your draws, your deck can be very scatterbrained and it has no idea what it's trying to do because it's coming from a place of, do I want crabs? Do I not want crabs? If I have a crab, here's how I'm supposed to play the game. Well, now I drew a crab on turn 3. Am I supposed to play this crab now? Like, the deck itself, and it's funny because I talk to people about this and like, I like that aspect of the deck. It makes it hard to play. And I'm like, it also makes it inconsistent. So, I don't know. I'm sure that we will get comments on my disdain for this deck. It's also my least favorite deck of all time, Mikaela. I don't know if you know this. Like, I actually hate this deck. I think that it's poo-poo, to be nice. And I'm glad that, like, these top decks all seem to have pretty decent matchups against it. And I also think that... Go ahead.
I'll have you know, people are going to be playing this deck for 7 more months.
I know they will. It's just too loved. People are going to do it. To be fair, I'm okay if people play the deck. If I think the deck is bad, and I'm prepared for it, then obviously it's good for me if people play it, right? Like, it just means I'm going to win. It just means I'm going to win more.
Yeah. But, until they just draw the perfect hand and you're salty.
Oh, that's true. If they do draw the perfect hand, the deck's quite good. Every deck's good with their net draw, though. Well, let's talk about the number 2 deck. This jumps all the way from 19 to 41 points. Part of that is because I kind of combined the archetypes a little bit. So Sultai Yorion has kind of 3-ish versions of the deck. It's really 2, but it's basically an ultimatum version that's like a all-in ramp deck, ultimatum control deck, and the other one is a smattering of control-ish mid-range rampy Sultai decks. And the reason that I combined the two is, one, you won't know which one you're playing against unless you're in an open deck list event for pretty early in that game. And the other reason is because I think that what will happen is one of these decks will get streamlined, or the decks will come together and get streamlined, and then you'll have a correct version of this deck. I think that this deck is pretty good. I got the chance to play against the Ultimatum version today. I was really impressed with how easy it was for the deck to get to 7 mana. I think this deck is strong. So
I traded in all my wild cards to build the Sultai Ultimatum deck because there are a lot of new cards in this deck. So anybody listening who's thinking about building this deck, it's not cheap, but it's a lot of fun to play. I was having a great time with it. There's a lot of play to it, and it's like, I feel like it's like a control player's dream deck. Like when you, unless you're like the blue-white draw go player, but if you're like a control player who likes to do things in your game, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, some of them have up to 14 removal spells main. You got a ton of ramp. You got cultivate. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff to do with your mana. You got the Florahedron card that we talked about. There's just a lot going on in the deck. And also you get to play Tibalt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you get to like pick on the Rakdos players with all these Shadows Verdicts and what else is in here? The Elspeth's Nightmares.
Shadows Verdict and Elspeth Nightmare, really strong. I do think that Sultai Yorion is here to stay. I think that it's funny how so many people were looking towards things like blue-white Yorion and blue-black Yorion or Esper Yorion, kind of, and it just all culminated this week, and everybody's like, nah, this is it. We're going Sultai, and there was a couple different ways that it came out.
Imagine Uro in this deck.
Or we could not. We could.
What about Oko?
Oh man, you know what's funny? I was thinking last night about how Uro and Oko die to the card you just mentioned, the 5 mana.
Shadows Verdict.
Yeah, I was like, there was a world in which maybe they tested all of these together. That's kind of weird. But overall, I, like you, would play the Ultimatum version. Do I know if that's 100% correct? No. Do I know that it looks more fun? Yes. I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't quite figured out the Chariot in the deck. That's the only card that I'm kind of like
The what?
On. The Asika's Chariot.
Oh my gosh, you got to watch the video today that I recorded. The Chariots were lit for Matt. He had a play where he was able to hold off a Maul because he could crew the Chariot with a Shark token and then make another Shark token. It was lit.
Okay, my dreams were not that big today. We were like making tutus. So
he was making big old sharks.
I guess if you can make like Kraken tokens too, maybe that's
oh
sweet.
There you go. If you got the best of sea gods. Yeah. Also, Chariot is my favorite card in the set. I was texting Michael Hinderocker. He's one of the people that worked on the set. And I was like, in my headcanon, Michael Hinderocker designed this entire card and demanded to be in the set. It's a Chariot driven by kitties that makes kitties, and that makes me happy. So this deck is automatically great just because of that, Mikaela. That's all a deck needs, right?
And the kitties are very fluffy.
Oh, they're so fluffy. They're the fluffiest ones. Let's talk about the number one deck. This shocked me.
Yeah. I'm a little shocked too.
44 points. Rakdos, mid-range.
And so it feels like Sultai should be favored in this matchup.
I would think I would think that a lot of decks are. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, I do think something that you're running into is I think Rural is probably struggling against this deck. I haven't looked, but the Egon is, I can see being a huge issue for the deck. They can cast Kroxa super reliably too, which can shut down a Rural deck very fast. So I think that's helping there, and I don't think these tempo decks are very good against it. And Dimir Rogues just folds to it.
Wait, no, but that deck's so good. You should definitely play that deck in a meta game full of this Rakdos deck. I have no idea how you could ever lose.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is on Goldfish right now, Dimir Rogues 13.8, Rakdos midrange only 11. I mean, clearly. Go ahead. Sorry, it's the worst.
So there's a Rakdos midrange deck and there's a Rakdos sacrifice deck. this Rakdos mid-range deck, I did try that earlier, and I'm like, I don't know how any, like, I think this got, what place did this get? Because it did pretty well. So this Rakdos mid-range deck got 5th place in the SCG.
I combined them
And-
for the purpose of the power rankings for what it's worth.
Well, they're pretty different decks.
Oh, well, that's my bad.
But like one is like your traditional Croxus sacrifice deck. This other one, like it kind of has that, but you're also trying to like cheat back like the Arc Fiend's Vessel with Lurises and all that other nonsense. You have magmatic Chandlers in it, and I am awful at this type of archetype. That is the Rakdos mid range. I think the sacrifice version with like the Woe Striders and everything is a little bit more powerful.
Yeah, I think that the Streamlined Mire Triton deck, as I like to refer to it as, it's one of the decks that I've gotten the chance to play against quite a bit on Arena as when I've been playing. And honestly, I think that it just has, I don't know if a lot of it is the one I want to say. I am surprised constantly playing against this deck. I think that Gruul has, for what it's worth, I just think Claim the Firstborn is just historically really good against Gruul. So if you can play a deck that gets to profitably play that card, you're just going to be in good shape.
Yeah.
So
I mean, also this deck gaining the Throne of Death as a 1-drop to start filling the graveyard is pretty big.
Yeah.
But I think people adapt. Like, the Sultai decks kind of have enough graveyard hate and exile that it really makes this type of list struggle quite a bit.
Let's kind of dive deep. We've given you the power rankings, so just kind of to remind people, we've got 8th place is it Tempo, 7th place Boros Aggro, 6th place Mono Green, 5th place Naya, 3rd place Gruul, or 4th place Gruul, 3rd place Dimir, 2nd place Sultai, 1st place Rakdos. What are you trying to beat right now? Like you obviously got your VML match, but also you're getting on the ladder, or you're going to an SCG this weekend. You're going to play one of those satellites. What are you trying to beat?
I expect there to be a whole lot of Rakdos and Sultai Yorion at this point. Would not shock me.
That's kind of where my head's at too. Those are the kind of the top two. I expect people will just play Dimir for what it's worth. I think that deck is super beloved, and so it would be in the ones that I'm trying to prepare for. Where does that leave you? Like, where do you think your head would be at trying to go against those decks?
I really like the Sultai Yorion list. That's probably what I want to be playing. I want to be prepared for the mirror match. And I want to be aware of, decks like Rogues and Tempo that are out there and just be able to counter those. That's probably what I want to be playing.
Yeah, for me, Sultai Yorion looks super interesting. I think that the card Negate seems pretty strong right now for what it's worth against both the Sultai Yorion deck and kind of just as an ability to kind of protect your own stuff. And so there are kind of 3 decks that I'm looking at if I play an SCG this weekend. Those decks are, I kind of mentioned a couple of them. Gruul Splashing Negate is something I actually am going to try. Sultai Yorion, trying to figure out kind of tech for the mirror and making sure that I'm prepared for Rogues. And then the last deck that almost made it onto this list is actually just Temur ramp decks. They are the 60 card ones are really interesting to me. There are, I don't know. I think Genesis Ultimatum, it seems well positioned right now. There are not a lot of other negates running around right now, and not a lot of Disable Stroke. And so for that reason, it's like, okay, well, I can also just win the game on the spot. So that's kind of where my head's at.
Yeah, the ramp decks are all very reasonable.
So that is a shorter episode this week, but and in the future, for what it's worth, those watching on YouTube, we'll have those on the screen. I got a new computer, so things kind of got a little messy this time, but we'll have the decks on the screen moving forward, talk a little bit more about individual card choices, but I'm excited to kind of keep these power ranking style episodes going whenever we get the chance. Mikaela, anything you want to kind of say about the standard format before we wrap up and say goodbye?
Call Time brought in some new cards. And I think it's a lot of the same, but it's definitely a little bit fresher and something new, and definitely room to be explored. And it seems like kind of open right now.
I agree. I think that the format seems open. I know that a lot of people were really worried about, for what it's worth, the Naya deck last week, and they thought that it was just going to be a knockout of the park and then nothing could compete. And then we obviously see Rakdos really doing well this time around, as well as the Sultai deck. So there's obviously going to be checks and balances in this format, and I'm excited to kind of see where it goes. Just before we say goodbye, don't forget to check out the rest of the network. We've got Sam Black doing drafting archetypes. We've got Mason and Allie doing constructive criticism. We've got Common Knowledge, your premier Pauper podcast. Tons of stuff going on the network. You can find the show at Arena Mythicast. You can find me at Spencer13H. You can find Mikaela at Mythic Mikaela, where you can also find you everywhere there, right? Like, that's your stream handle. That's everything.
Yep.
And then, yeah, like, subscribe, review. It's all appreciated. Mikaela, I had fun today. I'm excited. What time is your VML match? Can people catch it? Will this podcast be up before your match?
I don't know when my VML match is going to be yet. We haven't scheduled it. Hopefully this weekend sometime. I have the F2K tournament, so I'm going to try to get it in before that.
Nice. Well, I'm rooting for you. I think the listeners are rooting for you too. We will see everybody next week with another episode of Arena Mythicast.